Now we're going to move on. We're still on page 154, Part D, Appendicular Structures, and we're on the second column now. Now we're going to look at the ulna, and here is the ulna, how it would be oriented in the skeleton. This is the proximal end, this is the distal end, and again, on the test, if you were to see this structure and there is no orange or any colored indicator, then we just want to know the name of the bone, and that would be an ulna. Now I want to tell you a little hint on how to know the difference between the ulna and the radius. If you actually look here, we have a little U. So some people say it looks like a wrench. Other people, like myself, I take advantage of this letter U for ulna. Alright, so that's how you know what bone you're looking at. This is the ulna. Now, the first structure we're going to look at is the head of the ulna. Now, heads of bones tend to be rounded. Sometimes they're proximal, but other times they're distal. Here is a case in which the head of the ulna is the distal rounded portion. Okay, so that is colored in orange here. That is the head of the ulna. Okay, so there's my proximal end and my distal end. And again, it is colored in orange, so that is the head of the ulna. Move that closer so you can see that. Okay, head of the ulna. All right. This direction. Sorry, trying to get used to how to orient these, and we're using new equipment, so do forgive us for all of our little faux pas and hiccups today, okay? So there's the head of the ulna. Next structure is the olecranon process. So the head is at the distal end, the olecranon process is at the proximal end, and it's kind of like the top of the U, if you want to look at it like that. Okay? But it's actually the very bony part up here. That is the olecranon process. That's the bony prominence that makes up your elbow. When you bang your elbow on the counter, that part that you're hitting on the table, that is my olecranon process. Okay, so if it were like this, that part down there, that would be my elbow. Okay, so that's the olecranon process. Now the next structure is the styloid process. So processes tend to be structures, again, that protrude. So olecranon process is at the proximal end. The distal end has a little tiny tooth. I'm going to see if I can use my probe. I don't know if that's going to make a difference. But here is the this little orange tooth right here.
Not like that.
That is called,
Turn it this way.
this way. There we go. Okay. So this is my styloid process. It is at the distal end of the ulna. So it is the most distal prominence or projection. It is the styloid process. That is the bump at your wrist. Okay? So if you grab your wrist with your thumb and your index finger, you can feel some bones right there. The ulna is on your pinky side. So if I were to put the ulna here, okay, this is the orientation in my body, there's a little bump right there, okay? That bump, That bump is this styloid process. So I usually tell students, just think about, which I don't know, well, people wear Apple Watches now. So you wear a stylish Apple Watch at your wrist. So styloid processes of the ulna is near the wrist. It's at the distal end. There's another styloid process of the radius, and we'll get to that in a minute. The next structure is the trochlear notch. So this is the structure that actually forms the inside of the U. Okay, so it's all highlighted in orange right here. So that is called the trochlear notch. That is, again, that's the structure that articulates with the trochlea of the humerus to form the elbow joint. That is the olecranon, or I'm sorry, the trochlea with the trochlear notch. Okay, this is the trochlear notch. And lastly, we have another process. So here is my olecranon process again up here, the top of my U. And the bottom of the U, you can see this projection right here. This is the coracoid process. Sorry, wait a minute, I'm on my ulna. Coronoid process, I'm sorry. There are some coronoid processes and coracoids. The only coracoid process is on the scapula. All others are coronoids. So there is a coronoid process here on the ulna. So it's kind of like the bottom of the U. Okay, there's my coronoid process. All right, next we have the radius. Now, the radius is kind of a unique bone also, in that you can identify it because it has almost a perfectly round circle. Okay, that is the radius. Now, in math, radius is what? It is the half the diameter of a circle. So as you can see, this is a nice round circle, and remember, circles have radii. So a radius has a nice, perfectly round circle at the top, or I should say near perfect. Okay, so that's how you would be able to identify what bone you're looking at, is the radius. Now, the radius, I already said, has a nice perfectly round circle. Well, guess what that part is? That happens to be the head of the radius. Okay, so the head of the radius is that nice rounded circle. Head of radius. Every head has to have a neck, right? So again, here is my neck of radius just below the head. Just like us. We have our head, our neck, then we have a shoulder. But the radius here has the head of radius, this is the neck of radius, and then we're going to see another structure. See that little bump there? I actually have that bump highlighted here. This is the radial tuberosity, or I think it's radial tuberosity in your book. Yes, radial tuberosity. Okay, so this is a bumpy area, and they tend to be tubercles. Okay, so radial tuberosity. And there's one last part of the radius. Now, the head is proximal, and on the distal end, if you hold it up, and you can see a projection right here, it is the most distal part. If you hold it straight up, that is called the styloid process of the radius. Okay, styloid process of the radius. So it's a tiny little, almost triangular shaped structure Okay. There is the, oops, there we go, styloid process of the radius. Okay, so that was our ulna and our radius, and your radius actually sits in your arm like so. It is on your thumb side, so there's that radial styloid process, and you can actually feel that right at your wrist. All right. Lastly, sorry about that. I need a drink. We have our hand. Okay, we have the hand. Now,
Hold it down here since the.
I actually have a colored one so that we can see the different bones. Can you see it? Hang on one second. Focus in on this. Now, the hand has our wrist bones, and there are 8 bones here. You do not need to know individually their names, but these are your carpal bones. So for the test, if you were to ask to identify these structures here, which I believe are in yellow, these are the carpal bones. Then the long bones that are highlighted in pink, those are the metacarpals. And then we have our phalanges. Now the phalanges have 3. It's proximal, middle, and distal. Proximal, middle, distal, proximal, middle, distal, proximal, middle, distal. And when we get to our thumb, we only have 2.
Can you hold
Okay.
it? Okay.
Is that better?
Yep. And then rotate it just a little bit so that they can see the thumb better.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Okay, and
There, that's a little better, I think. You see the
rotate
thumb?
it. Yeah, rotate it back. Okay, hold it right there.
Okay, there we go. All right.
Okay. Very
So
good.
now you can see that we have our carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges. So we have 3 separate colors. For the test, you would see either the carpals would be orange, or the metacarpals would be orange, or the phalanges. I don't have multicolored bones on the test. I have just one color so that not to confuse you. All right, so those are the radius, ulna, and the hand. And I'm going to do another video to continue on with the appendicular system. So check out the next video. See you in a little bit.